for having us here. I'm Hugo Alves. I'm the CEO of AUXLY. AUXLY is a branded cannabis products company, and we manufacture, brand, market, and sell cannabis products to Canadian recreational and wellness consumers under 4 proprietary brands. Thanks.
Thanks, Hugo. And Sebastian?
Morning, everybody. Sebastian St. Louis, CEO at HEXO. HEXO is a consumer products cannabis company. We've currently hold the market share leadership position in Canada. Latest numbers out of Headset have us at a 13.4% national market share in rec cannabis, with the next competitor at 11.4%. We are number 1 in a number of categories, including pre-rolls, flower, gel caps, beverages, which we do in a partnership with Molson Coors, in which we have also entered the Colorado market where we're expanding to other states. So we're looking forward to this panel today. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Sebastian. And Paolo?
Hi, my name is Paolo DeLuca. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of ORGANIGRAM. We're a leading licensed producer here in Canada. We have facilities in Moncton, New Brunswick, and Winnipeg, Manitoba. The Winnipeg, Manitoba facility is something that we recently purchased earlier in the calendar year. And we've launched a set of SKUs out of that facility recently, gummy SKUs that are available in most markets right now. But our flagship facility is in Moncton, New Brunswick. It's a large indoor facility, 3-level tiered growing. We also manufacture vapes and chocolates out of that facility, as well as some other novel products that we'll talk about later on in the panel.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Mandish.
Thanks, Aaron. Great to be here and appreciate being here with my fellow peers. Mandish Dosanjh, CEO and President of Pure SUNFARMS. We're a BC-based cannabis organization, a wholly owned subsidiary of Village Farms. Being out in BC, we have the largest, one of the largest in Canada, if not the world, sites, 1.1 million square feet. We've currently expanded into our second production facility directly across the street. Our primary focus is the Canadian recreational market. We've shown to be the leaders in flower in recreational cannabis in Canada, and under our singular brand, Pure SUNFARMS. So I'm excited to be here and excited for the conversation today.
Absolutely. Excited to have you guys. So I thought a great place to start before we dive into the specifics of innovation is kind of, with the consumer. So would love to, hear your guys, thoughts in terms of the role of innovation for the consumer. When you believe a consumer is either buying online or going into a store, how do you think the consumer thinks about newness and innovation in their purchase? Are they going in and looking for that same product that they had last time? Are they going in and looking for a new product, seeing what's new within the industry? So I'd love to get what you guys are doing within your own studies and observations of the consumer and how newness and innovation plays a key role in their purchasing habits. Actually, Sebastian, I know you love talking about consumers with me, so you want to take a first stab at this?
Yeah, happy to, Aaron. Thank you. So I think, first of all, the industry is hyper dynamic. I mean, the companies just on this panel are constantly introducing new products. I think the consumer is still split into 2 large buckets. In Canada, you have to understand the consumer in terms of a traditional cannabis consumer that's very familiar with products, especially including things like concentrates. So we're seeing a lot of innovation now, and certainly directional movement towards more concentrate market share. We're seeing a lot of demand for a high THC products that remains a way to differentiate on the surface level. Beyond that surface level, we're obviously talking about minor cannabinoids, experiences, terpenes, and those minor cannabinoids and experiences bring you to the new consumer. The new consumer, somebody who may be returning to cannabis from a long time, somebody that is not, probably doesn't have a black market source or dealer at arm's length and is starting to get into recreational cannabis, typically with non-smoked products. And they're certainly trying things from whether they be creams, whether they be ingestibles, whether they be a beverage. They typically consume more often. The basket would be a little bit smaller for those new consumers, but they do purchase more. So there's higher volume of those consumers, even if the total volume consumption is certainly skewed towards the older consumers. So I think innovation plays a huge role insofar as differentiation on the shelf. Although right now the SKU proliferation in market is such that you really have to come with a very unique proposition to even get a listing. And so I think that's really the challenge for our panelists over the next 12 months, is making sure that we continue to get more and more relevant for those consumers.
And Mandesh, so I know some of the people on the panel, a lot of the Canadian LPs have a lot of brands. Over at Pearson Farms, you've really focused on the one brand strategy. So kind of talk about maybe how even within the one brand, you try to, drive innovation more specifically through the 1.0 products that you guys have with flower.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Aaron. So for us, I mean, innovation plays a key role in the consumer path to purchase. And that type innovation, it can take many shapes or forms. It can be a new brand, it can be a new product or a product extension, or just an improved raw quality or kind of creating product. And so we think that innovation should help a brand reach new consumers or occasions, or just keep a brand relevant. And so for us, creating a singular brand was about building that relationship with the consumer so we could establish trust, identity, because we believe, repeat consumers, they're coming back for a reason. They want what is tried, tested, and true. And when they found a product brand that meets their needs, they're going to keep coming back. We wanted to kind of, as we started off in the Canadian cannabis space, is really give them something that was tried and true. We've seen that with some of our initial offerings. But we also know that customers look and try and shop what's new. We know that's an important part. So continuing that innovation underneath Pure Sunfarms with new products, new strains, new offerings is going to be very important to us. And understanding kind of how we take what we've built and built that trust for Sunfarms and continuing to identify customers and understanding what does that mean for us. Does that mean we have to innovate within something we're already doing today? How do we extend from what we've already built and doing it in a proper manner? So we look at it from a needs assessment from the consumer, making sure we can build trust so they continue to come back, because the repeat customer is a big part of it. And there are customers that will jump around from brand to brand or product.
Sorry, I think he was breaking up there a little bit choppy. Hopefully we'll get him back in a bit. But, one way when I think about, the purchase, right? So if you look at other CPG categories, right? So if you look at soda, the way I think about it is if someone likes Coca-Cola, a lot of the time they're going to go and they're going to purchase a Coca-Cola. You look at something else like wine, they might purchase, a bottle of wine they always like, but also be trying something new as well. So Paolo, I'd love to pass the question over to you. How do you think the current purchase habits of a cannabis consumer are today relative to another CPG product? And how do you think they might evolve more over time?
Yeah, and I think a few of us may be having internet difficulties, so let me know if you're having trouble hearing me, Aaron. But it looks like it seems to be working now. Look, it's a great question. I think it's a nascent industry. It's only in Canada been live on the rec side for 3 years, so it's natural that consumers are naturally going to want to explore different brands, different producers. And different SKUs, even just, for example, in Toronto, where I'm based, the proliferation of stores, walking down the street, you take a different route. Let's say you're walking to work every day. You might walk into a different store. They're going to have a different set of SKUs. So your selection may be different. Now, they may carry some common SKUs, but I think there still is, it's reasonable to assume that the consumer still is going to experiment to a greater degree than they would in more developed categories. But I think the point that the example that you use with wines is a good one. For example, we have the most searched brand on the OCS website for, I think it's something like 9 consecutive months with our Shred. We recently extended or stretched that brand into another product, gummies, called Shred'ems recently. So to us, that's obviously an opportunity to take a loyal consumer in the milled product, which is our Shred product, and have them maybe try this gummy that we've launched more than they would a completely new brand or a product from another LP, which they are not as familiar with. So I think there's opportunity certainly to build that brand affinity, which will take time. And obviously, again, because of the life cycle that we are in the industry, you're not going to get the same level of brand loyalty that you have in brands that have been around for 100 years. But that's certainly the goal, I think, of all the producers and the CPG companies in the space right now.
Well, thanks for that. That's helpful color. And lastly, Hugo, I know you have a legacy focus on 2.0 products, specifically within vape. Do you believe the consumer purchase habits are different within 2.0 products and vapes than maybe you saw within flower? And how did you maybe go about in terms of marketing and your product towards those purchase habits, particularly within the vape and 2.0 category?
Yeah, I think
Look, I think that you start with the consumer, right? Whether it's 2.0 or 1.0. What we're seeing from our own consumer studies and from the insights we get just from being out in market with bud tenders and our retail partners is newness is a significant purchase driver, but newness alone is not sufficient for converting interest into purchase. Certainly not a repeat purchase, right? Consumers want a product and demand a product that lives up to their expectations in other critical purchase drivers such taste, potency, formulation, quality. And I think to build on something Paulo said, I think, brand power is also important here, will start to play a bigger role, right? Consumers are going to continue to explore and trial different products, but in that 1.0 and 2.0. But along the way, they're going to pick their favorites, right? And if that product consistently meets, and emphasis on the word consistently, their expectations, they are going to be loyal to the product, and they are going to be more apt to trial a new product from a brand that they trust. That's why we're seeing such incredible trial rates for our Back 40 branded products. We've been able to consistently delight our Back 40 vape consumers, and they have rewarded that consistency by actively trialing our recently launched Back 40 flower and pre-roll SKUs. And at the end of the day, that is our thesis. The brand that understands their target consumer the best and most completely and consistently delivers the features and benefits that consumer wants wins that consumer's loyalty and trust, and they get to enjoy the best of both worlds, repeat purchase and new product trial.
Absolutely. Thanks for that color. So I'd love to dive more about innovation within 1.0 products. Sebastian, you brought up high THC, being important today, but obviously within the whole cannabis plant, there's a lot of cannabinoids, the terpene profile. Us sitting here, I think a lot of us are more knowledgeable than the consumer who might be going on an everyday basis. So, how do you think about, the evolution of the consumer purchase and how they're going to look towards beyond just THC to the full terpene profile or everything that the plant has to offer in their purchase habits? And how does that kind of drive the decision-making that you have today, particularly within 1.0 products and as you're looking to, cultivate and plan your growth cycles? So Sebastian, I'd love for you to kick that question off if you could.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So I think that's a bit of a paradox of our consumers, and I'll challenge one thing you just said. I think I talked about those two groups of consumers, so kind of existing cannabis consumers and the new consumers. A lot of the existing cannabis consumers are very, very knowledgeable about cannabis. I mean, they understand terpene profiles, minor cannabinoids. They know what they want. They know where to go look for it. The paradox, though, I think comes when it's the new consumers, I think, that we really need to educate and go after with the minor cannabinoids. A lot of the need states that we can address with the minor cannabinoids are things that people treat daily, whether it's pain, nausea, sleep, whether it's sexual health, whether it's your general euphoria or socializing. All these things are need states that everybody can benefit from. And I think that communicating that in a format that's really exciting for people, this is the challenge. And this, I think, is what we've accomplished very well in a first phase with our beverages with Molson Coors. Our Trust joint venture partnership currently sells about half of all beverages sold in Canada with cannabis. And the response from consumers is tremendous. We have an 86% repeat purchase rate on those SKUs. And the reason we've been able to do that is by really focusing those brand experiences on specific occasions. So we have dealcoholized beers, we have dealcoholized wines, we have something that's more akin to an energy drink in our XMG that's focused to gamers, and of course our whole Veryvel line that's focused on health and wellness. So as you start to really develop these discrete experiences that tell a story to consumers beyond just, hey, is it CBN, THC8, which specific minor cannabinoid, and you say, this is a product that will help you do X, sleep better, live better, et cetera. And as you can start to build that story, I think that's where you start to drive that great repeat purchase. Now, that being said, one of the challenges is that we are very limited from an advertising perspective in Canada. And so getting the category to grow needs to take time and is happening organically. And so the categories overall need to grow, and we need to take this market from this $4.5 billion retail market in Canada to the $10 billion market that we all think it is.
Absolutely. Thanks for that color. So yeah, I definitely agree in terms of the more experienced consumers, certainly more aware of the terpene profile. We also have, your new consumers. Powell, would love to get, your opinion in terms of the different pricing tiers, right? In terms of coming off what Sebastian just mentioned there, different terpene profiles being within the THC. Do you feel like that more experienced consumer is more inclined to maybe pay a premium, for that and look beyond the THC? Or do you feel like they might be more value conscious? And I'm sure there's a mix between that, but would love your opinion in terms of how you kind of break that down between that experienced consumer and how they're looking at the full terpene profile beyond just the THC as they're coming into their purchases, especially now that they're transitioned from the illicit market into the legal market.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when we talk about the experienced user, it's best to not think of that group as a monolith. I think you can further segment them based on their wealth, their gender, the frequency, the volume, and their ability of their wallet size as well. So I think within that you're going to find people that are maybe less frequent users. They're experienced. They've been doing it for a long time. There's a frequency to it, but maybe it's not 4 times a day. Maybe it's once a week or on the weekend, and maybe their wallet size is bigger. That's going to be a very different consumer in some respects in the way you target them versus someone who has a smaller budget but needs to consume more frequently. So I think the idea here certainly is to segment and then to target the offerings based on that segmentation. We play pretty heavily in the mainstream and then in the value segments. We don't have a large assortment of offerings in flower and pre-rolls right now in the premium. That's something that over time we plan to address. But given the size of our company, the size of our facility, we are obviously looking to bring in better genetics and look at alternative methods of treating the product, whether it be hand trimming or hang drying and so forth. So I think you need to segment and you need to have brands and products that address all those markets. So and as a leading producer, you have 4 of the top 6 companies in terms of market share on your call today. So we need to compete in all segments and all categories. So that's something that we're looking to address going forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Hugo, Legacy, you had more focus on 2.0, but now you're increasing your exposure to the 1.0 category within flowers. So with all this in mind, how are you looking to, increase your exposure to the 1.0 category, making sure you have the right flower that the consumer wants, specifically towards THC and the whole terpene profile?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Look, I think, we chose at the outset of our company to focus on 2.0, and that was a strategic decision based on, where we saw the market in terms of participants and consumers, and then our own relative capabilities, and when we believed those would come online, right? Like, when were we going to have the capabilities to be able to win in the 1.0 segment? And now certainly we're entering a market where, there are different sort of levers to purchase, and the consumer preferences are still dynamic and evolving, but you're starting to see some clear trends emerge. And I think for us, and I would say to your question about how do you manage, entry and in that dynamicism, I think it's having a focused strategy, right? And in particular, understanding what consumer segments you want to address, right? If presumably you're not going to be all things to all people, and then getting as close as possible to those target consumers to understand what need, occasion, or experience they're looking for in a specific product, and then you work backwards from there. So, our flower innovation plans don't rely exclusively on potency. It is obviously a key consideration for our target consumers, but it can't be the sole basis for true product differentiation, right? So we try to address the overall consumption experience from packaging and freshness, appearance, aroma, flavor, smoke quality, and then we test, right? We do sensory testing with consumers from across our target segment to get real life feedback on what we've gotten right and what we can improve. So we feel we're prepared to compete in the 1.0 segment. I think the early results are quite encouraging and would support that confidence. And we feel we're prepared because we do have a focused strategy, and we've invested our capital and resources into building the core capabilities that allow us to get close to the consumer, our consumers, quickly design and manufacture products that respond to those wants and needs, refine those offerings through testing so that we're launching with products we have a high degree of confidence are going to meet consumer expectations,
we're able to get that product into broad distribution quickly, and then of course, market and communicate those benefits effectively with our target consumers.
Thanks for that color, Hugo. So next question, I want to stay on 1.0 before we dive into 2.0 products. So another thing that's been a focus has been strain-specific offerings. Mandeesh, would love to kick us off to you to start. You guys have had a lot of success within strain-specific, products. So we'd love to hear, how you guys think about, strains to drive newness, but also kind of having that existing kind of core product that the consumer knows they're going to be able to have and come to, receive when they purchase maybe a Pure Sunfarms, Afghan Kush product. So how do you think about having your legacy specific strains and then also driving, also having new strain offerings for the consumer as well as you go through your growth cycle planning?
Absolutely. And apologies for the technical issue and dropping off there a second ago. So we know that consumers will gravitate towards things that are familiar. And I think this plays true within the cannabis space, especially with strains, so strain specific. And like take our Pink Kush, for example, it's a fan favorite with strong roots in the Canadian legacy market. And I think we've proven out that time and time again, consumers will come back on that repeat purchase. However, like I said earlier, consumers do want to see what's new. They're constantly shopping it. We know some customers selectively go in to the online store and will exclusively look at what's new and kind of click through that and understand that. So we know we need to be relevant on both sides. And so how we're balancing it is continuing to deliver with the strength of our supply chain and cultivation, the strains that consumers love today, while using our expansive greenhouse to continually trial. So right now I would tell you, over a dozen, if not 24 strains are in various spots in the innovation pipeline. And what we've really seen as the industry has evolved is that the boards and the stores are willing to take smaller quantities. So really leaning into that and not having to have broad national distribution on a new innovation or a new SKU, working regionally, specifically with the differences between a BC customer versus an Alberta customer versus an Ontario customer as an example, and understanding how we can lean into what we call an LTA, a limited time availability. We've launched that with our Blueberry Kush, which we launched for 420 earlier this year with Ontario, saw that become a top 5 strain specific flower. And that was sub 20% potency. So really saw that quick sell through and the customer love for it. We launched it as an LTA, a few weeks ago in BC and saw similar results. So really kind of testing the market with the smaller and newer offerings that we're cultivating in the greenhouse, and then making that decision based on the consumer feedback, as Hugo mentioned, understanding what they're liking, what they're seeing in that new strain, and seeing if it has that lasting power to move into our ongoing portfolio. So for us, it's a balancing act. We think we're scaled and built to do that. And we're starting to see the early benefits of being able to deliver that to the market in either smaller quantities or consistent ongoing offerings.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that color, Mandeesh. And Paolo, how do you guys think about, planning ahead, especially when you get strain specific, right? So maybe consumers constantly evolving, right? And so are the strains. So sometimes you do got to plan ahead, maybe 6 months, or more to plant the seed, today for that strain that the consumer is going to be buying, months from now. So how do you guys think about that in your own kind of planning for cultivation?
Yeah, we've made it actually central to our core planning process in our cultivation facility, and we've actually just pulled the trigger on finishing our phase 4C, which will give us a lot more capacity, increasing our room capabilities by at least 30%. So the ways that we're dealing with that, we're figuring out ways to either breed ourselves or bring in new genetics and to screen them quickly. And so that process has gotten a lot better for us. And we make the decision, we look at the phenotyping, see how the genetics are working within our environment, see if it's a good fit for us. If it is, we take it to the next level, and then we obviously test it in smaller markets or by way of a one-time offering. And we build in the flexibility to scale up quickly if it's a successful genetic for us. And the things that we're looking for in genetics are obviously, we're looking at potency, aroma, all those types of things. We're paying attention to the social listing, see what's working well in other markets. But we also don't want to come to market against 5 other LPs and all come to market with the same product. So we want to have some novelty in that selection as well. Where we have gone head to head with LPs, for example, we've done well on some of them. Ultra Sour and Black Cherry Punch, for example, I think we're number one in those strains nationally. We sell Ultra Sour under Limelight. Some Canadian listeners may recognize it under that brand. But the idea really is to build in a process where we can screen quickly and then make sure it works for us in the facility, that we can do it well, and then also test it in smaller batch sizes, whether it be in a smaller province or by way of a one-time offering in a bigger distribution place. And if there's acceptance there, we can bring that to market quickly. Like when I look at our portfolio now, it's completely different than the offerings that we had in 2018. And the ones that are flagship brands for us will continue to, or strains will continue to obviously provide that to market. And when we see that there's an opportunity to switch out a core offering with another one that seems to have better acceptance, we're prepared to do so. So the idea is to have the core portfolio and then also satellite offerings that we can then move into the core portfolio when the time is right.
No, certainly makes sense to have the mix between the two. Sebastian, you brought something up earlier in terms of, more of the effects, whether it be, pain, sleep, or otherwise. So how do you think about, having this strain specific for flower, but then also maybe down the road having, offerings that are specific to different needs, whether it be sleep or pain? And do you feel like those are going to be two different segments, both in terms of product category as well as consumer experience, whether it be for more, quasi-medical versus recreational use, for what it might be for strain specific versus, something that might be sleep aid or pain or otherwise?
Yeah, we're spending a lot of time on that, Aaron, and it's that's a very long range plan. So we're currently looking at, and we're looking at it in 2.0, but also on flower. So how can we improve flower? So how can you use tools like CRISPR to get to a better flower on the genetic side? How can you look at the GMO type? How do you leverage your tissue culture to modify the plant to get the characteristics that you want? Those are multi-year R&D projects that the science team is hard at work on. I think what's nearer term is the ability to recombine essentially all the cannabinoids into essentially an active cocktail that will deliver specific need state. And so for that, we're heavily invested in a technology called Keystone Isolation Technologies, which is really about putting together these cocktails of cannabinoids that will deliver that specific need. At the end of the day, my belief is that the consumer doesn't want to parse out all the different letters and cannabinoids. I mean, you're talking about 170, 180 active compounds in this plant. It's our job to do that. And it's our job to deliver a discrete experience that delivers clinically proven results for our consumers that we can put consistently in all sorts of different products so that then we can match the consumption experience they want. So some people will prefer transdermal experience. Some people will prefer sublingual experience. Some people will prefer to ingest. And all those different ways of consuming the product will come with a different way you want to experience the cannabis. Do you want it to last for 8 hours? Do you want it to happen in 6 minutes and be gone in an hour? These types of things are what we need to solve, I think, as an industry. I think we're on our way to doing so. And even today, if you look at the portfolio of products that HEXO has on offer, we have a number of products that can take you from those various experiences. So for example, if you want to sleep better, we have a lot of our consumers that either consume our sublingual sprays, our gel caps. We are the #1 gel cap seller today in Canada. And then from social settings, when you look at time release, obviously our beverages doing very well. And we remain as well for the legacy consumers #1 in that pre-roll category, including the best-selling pre-rolls in Canada, the Readies.
No, absolutely. And thank you for that color there. So want to shift a little bit over to 2.0 products, starting off with vapes. If you look at some of the more mature US markets, vapes is the largest category for 2.0 products. Hugo, I'd love to kick this off to you since you guys have, very strong share within the vape market. How do you look at the vape market? It remains very competitive. You'll have competition beyond just the LPs launching brands in there. So how do you look to, stay relative, drive newness, and maintain share within a product like vapes in the Canadian market?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. And, vapes are the largest 2.0 category in Canada as well by quite a big margin. And as you mentioned, it's now every bit as competitive as flower, right? Lots of SKUs, lots of brands. We've been very fortunate. AUXLY has enjoyed a lot of success in the vape market. We're vape market leaders. We have about 25% share of overall market. And again, I think like it's about investing in the capabilities that you need to win within that chosen segment with your chosen consumer. So I think, first and foremost, we design each SKU in our portfolio with a specific consumer in mind. We don't believe with a one-size-fits-all approach. We tailor our products to our consumers. So, for example, our collab project consumers are, more in line with the type of consumer that Sebastian is mentioning. They're a bit more experienced with cannabis, and they're seeking out higher potency, truer to plant experiences. So we try and deliver those attributes consistently through our collab vapes. And you've seen that portfolio evolve to offerings that now focus more on more flavorful premium live resin concentrates. And then irrespective of brand, we always look to deliver on a promise of quality, safety, and efficacy. I think that's table stakes to build any type of brand equity and consumer loyalty. So we want consumers, whether it's a Foray, Back 40, or collab vape, to know that when they pick up that vape, they are going to get hardware and a product that is dependable. It's going to be safe to use, and it's going to deliver it on the promised effect. And then, finally, Aaron, our ability to innovate, to convert consumer insights into product differentiation and execute on the innovation that has been key to our continued success and market share gains in the vapor segment. And I think that includes not only our ability to solve the technical and scientific challenges that arise in developing these products, but also our ability to test and refine with actual consumers, and then be able to transfer the innovation into manufacturing quickly and get a final product into distribution.
Yeah, that's helpful color, and certainly something you guys have been successful in on the 2.0 category. So one thing that I believe to be kind of different for vapes versus, let's say, flower, for example, is, how do you guys look to kind of show the consumer, right? So Mandish, we were talking the other day about, kind of flower, maybe they'll be able to smell it or kind of see some type of difference, the THC, but for vape specifically, they just kind of see a cartridge. So it might be a little bit hard to kind of show the newness other than the strain. So how do you look to kind of show the newness and innovation within, vapes versus flower as you kind of produce product offerings for the consumer?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Aaron. So I would tell you that, Pure Sunfarms, we're all about flower first. And for us, building that brand trust around flower and delivering that experience around flower is an important part of our vaping strategy, which might be a little counterintuitive to some. But for us, it's about taking that experience that customers and consumers have been known to get from Pure Sunfarms products and then starting to extend that into the vape category. So we started off with a full spectrum winterized product that was very much kind of having that flavor, additional cannabinoids and plant content to deliver that flower experience in a vape cartridge. And so for us, it's about continually linking back any product and innovation we do to who we are as an organization and making sure customers can feel that brand connection. So for us, it will continually be an extension of delivering kind of that experience of the flower into the vaping product. And so continuing that extension and continuing to look at ways to innovate and deliver that is how we continue to address the consumer's needs. And, this panel has said it before, that you can't be all things to all people. So for us, it's about carving out a specific niche and segment that we feel like we can own, and we're starting to do that. And we've seen some really great traction and results against that.
Yeah, you brought up something, trying to bring the experience more similar to flower. I think some of the products within the category, like live resin and live rosin, are certainly product categories that are looking to do that, within vape. So Sebastian, would love your take in terms of, innovation with live resin and live rosin, how it can help categories, like vape, gain market share and provide an experience more similar to flower for the consumer.
Sure. I think concentrates are certainly going to be a very fast growing part of the market over the next 12 to 24 months. If we look to California demographics, for example, we can see that a lot of the demand that's coming from consumers is for more full spectrum type products like live resin. And so I think that there's a lot of innovation that needs to happen in those categories. With that being said, there's a lot of innovation to happen on flavor, on safety, and to really round out the portfolios. So I think the concentrate portfolio will explode in Canada over the next 12 months. We certainly plan on being a part of it.
All right, absolutely look forward to more launches and innovation. So shifting over to edibles quickly, right? So right now there are some regulatory hurdles within the 10 milligram limit. So we'd love to get your take in terms of how you guys look to drive innovation, within that hurdle right now you have from a regulatory perspective, how you think that might change. Paolo, pass over to you. You guys did make a purchase of a soft chew manufacturer earlier this year. So really kind of dipping your toe more into the edibles sector. So we'd love to get your take in terms of edible category, some of the limitations you have today and how you look to drive innovation.
Yeah, and just by way of background for your viewers, so especially those that are based in the U.S. So in Canada, we have a limit on edibles of 10 milligrams of THC per package. That just structurally puts us at a disadvantage compared to the illicit market, which is still a big part of the market, obviously in Canada and even in the U.S. 10 milligrams is simply not enough for a lot of cannabis users. They would have to, in some cases, purchase 2 or 3 to get the desired effect that they're looking for. For some other people, 10 is too much. But again, a lot of the purchases in Canada are driven by heavy users. So, we just through our own research and speaking to budtenders and customers, we know that price is particularly important when you need to purchase, 2 or 3 packages. And so that has been, I think, one of the reasons why edibles in Canada have under-indexed the U.S. by a significant margin. As you mentioned, we did purchase a soft chew manufacturer in the spring. Our first foray into the SKUs are what I'll call a high quality product, but at a very affordable price point. It's I believe it's they are the most affordable gummies on the market to date. They generally retail for about $4.99. Which is a lot different than the original price points that the gummies came in over a year or 2 years ago. I think it's a category that's ripe for expansion and ripe for innovation. Again, we launched with a high quality offering, but a very kind of straightforward offering. We have a lot more offerings in mind that you'll see those come to market in the next 6 to 12 months. But just to show you how malleable the market is, or what the opportunity set is. One of our competitors, they came to market late in gummies, earlier than us, but later than the initial launch. They had 0%. This is Wana Brands. They had 0% market share in August of 2020, and by January they had 50% market share in gummies. So I do think that it's very fluid, and the opportunities is very big there. And you'll see we've got 3 SKUs in market now. You'll see a bunch more SKUs come out in October. And also, as it relates to edibles, there are things that don't qualify from a regulatory perspective as an edible, but we've come to market with an ingestible extract that is essentially not considered edible from a regulatory perspective, but has 100 milligrams of THC in a package, 10 pieces of essentially a lozenge that doesn't contain any sugar in it, and that's selling very well. That retails for $20, which is really competitive to what the consumer can order online from the black market. So I think it's a under-indexed category right now, but I think there's tremendous growth in the next couple of years with innovation and SKU launches from a variety of players.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Hugo here, the live resin soft chew that AUXLY came out, we were with the collab project. So, some innovation there as well from you guys, and from HEXO and SUNFARMS also have your edible offerings. I want to switch over to the next category as we're running out of time. Beverages, historically been a small category, in the U.S., is now launched in Canada, still small today, still a lot of room for growth. Sebastian, you guys have partnered with Molson Coors. How do you look for innovation to really kind of drive growth, not only for your own products, but also the overall category as you improve emulsification, taste profile, and otherwise for the consumer, so that beverages potentially becomes a bigger part of the cannabis market?
Yeah, I think interestingly, it's less about innovation right now than about consumer uptake and trial, right? So inducing trial will broaden the category. We know that we've got this 86% repurchase rate for HEXO beverages today with our trust team, and so really the question is, how do you get people to try the beverage? Because once they do, they love it. And we have seen some notable impact from our innovation in Canada in the size of category. So when you compare to the US, Canada is now holding steady at about 1.7% of total cannabis sales for the beverage category. In certain markets, we've seen it get as high as 3% and as high as 6% when you consider unit sales. So what's really interesting about beverages, they typically make up, you get 1 unit per basket on a lot of, for a lot of consumers. So they typically round out their basket offering. There's a lot of regulatory change that needs to happen for beverages to really properly take off, where we think they could eventually take 10 to 15% of total market. But that really has to come with a carrying limit, a restriction removal. So right now in Canada, you can only purchase about 5 beverages at a time. It's based on a restriction for the milliliters of liquid, not for the amount of THC or active cannabinoids in the product. So Health Canada is well aware of this issue. They accept the issue, but understandably, of course, they've been quite busy with the pandemic as of late. So that has not been a priority. I do think that'll shift over the next couple of years, giving significant upside to the whole category. Of course, we continue to innovate all the time. So we have a new iced tea on the market. We have a new lemonade on the market. We're continuing to find ways to improve flavor, reduce calories, and just overall provide a phenomenal experience. And so the team's done a great job rounding out the portfolio in that sense.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And yeah, we'll look forward to more offerings to taste. So we're coming to the end now. I want to kind of take a step back and kind of ask an overall question to each of you guys. So we talked a lot about innovation today, right? But again, when I think about CPG, a lot of companies kind of have that kind of core product offering and then kind of innovation around that. Paul, you brought up kind of like the satellite, right? So, we'd love to kind of hear about your strategy, how you think about building the brand, which I think is a goal for many of the LPs, including yourselves within the industry, and having kind of that core brand offering as well as the innovation as you look to drive forward, with your company. So Mandeesh, I'd love to kick it off with you because I know you have the one brand strategy right now, SUNFARMS, and how you kind of think about having the core brand strategy and then innovation around it.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So we know consumers seek brands they trust, that are going to be built on values that they align with their values. And so for us, building everything under SUNFARMS was the right strategy to gain that customer confidence so that we could then expand upon it by looking at customer needs, how the market is continuing to segment itself as it builds. It's still very, very early days. And I think as we think about the world of today and tomorrow, it's about taking that recognition that we have as SUNFARMS being one of the top, if not the top brand in Canadian cannabis. It's applying that to the customer segmentation and understanding what those needs are. And at some point, expanding either with sister brands, parallel brands, or a specifically unique and brand new brand where consumers will then start to value that. And we're going to take our innovation pipeline and think about the consumer and work backwards. For us, it's all about making sure we're investing OPEX and CAPEX the right way to continuing to be profitable. And I think there's certain segments today, and will probably continue tomorrow, that are minuscule in terms of market share and the amount of innovation and competition that will come from all the different competitors, I think will only continue to grow. And when you think about the cost to enter other spaces that are very kind of formulaic driven as opposed to cultivation driven, the cost to entry is quite low for a lot of other product segments. So for us, it's all about continuing to be profitable, continuing to think about innovation the right way, and starting from what the consumer values and working backwards. So we're excited to continue to grow SUNFARMS and to look ahead about what sister or parallel brands we can launch to continuing to capture market share in spaces we're in or spaces we're continuing to develop.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Mandeesh. Paolo, come on.
Yeah, no, for us, I think the way the way we think of innovation is, we've had a lot of success with what I'll call a relatively modest investment in innovation to date. As many of the listeners might know, we took in a strategic partner, British American Tobacco, earlier in the year. They own 19.9% of us. They wrote a check for $221 million. As part of that deal, we have a product development collaboration and formed a center of excellence that's domiciled on in our Moncton facility. We have a commitment along with them to invest over $60 million over the next 3 years on innovation. We brought in people from our team, from their team, and brought in some new hires as well. and we're using that as a platform to make a long-term commitment to innovation and to develop products not only in that can be can serve the Canadian market, but obviously a lot bigger markets, including the U.S. and internationally. So for us, it's building the proper ecosystem with the right partners and the right commitment, and there's nothing that we intend to come out of that partnership in terms of the commercial success in the next 12 months. It really is geared to the medium and long term. What does that mean? It means a focus on safety and a focus on efficacy. And we believe with some of the bench strength that they bring from a regulatory perspective, understanding how to navigate the regulatory markets, the products and innovation that come out of that product development collaboration can transcend borders, and we can take that in basically any market that is open to either CBD or cannabis.
Thanks for that color. Look forward to seeing that, Paolo. Hugo?
Yeah, look, I think building brands is certainly critical to AUXLY's success. And I think like the products, the brand has to be tailored to a particular target consumer, right? So we rely on consumer insights and data analysis to develop and refine our brand strategies. And I think it's important to develop a strong brand that uniquely targets a specific consumer rather than continually launching brands or with indistinguishable or materially overlapping target consumers. So we really start with the consumer and then get as close to that consumer as possible. And that drives everything we do within the brand, what the brand looks like, what it stands for, what it promises, and then how you communicate that within our regulatory environment. And I think some of the panelists touched on it. People change, consumer preferences change. Your target consumer, as they get deeper into their cannabis journey, will evolve. So you need to, once you launch a brand, continuously support it, right? To really stay relevant to that chosen segment. If you want to build loyalty and trust with your consumer, you likewise have to evolve with their preferences to maintain that authentic connection and stay relevant to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. Sebastian, closing out.
Thanks, Aaron. Well, I think innovation certainly has a cost to entry. I'm much more concerned with the cost to win. And I think that we've been on that path, and it often takes large investments on the front end on a per category basis, but you see the fruits of those investments on the back if you can manage it appropriately. When I look at the top 3 competitors in Canadian cannabis today by market share, the capital that HEXO has deployed is significant. It's about $2 billion to date. But compared to the number 2 market share and the number 3 market share leader, they've actually spent $6 billion and $10 billion trying to keep up with HEXO. So we've been much more capital efficient in what we've done behind that innovation. On a trailing 12 months basis, that innovation has led us to have a $270 million top line on a consolidated basis. And when I look at next year, growing that top line comes to it's going and getting an incremental 10% from innovation specifically every year. And that innovation, the ones that succeed, become part of the core portfolio, and then you innovate again. I think another thing that's important to realize is that innovation for our consumers isn't just about the products and the specific product quality, but it's also about what it means in a broader sense, what it means from an environmental, social governance perspective, what it means and how we behave as cannabis companies. And I would like to underline that there's a lot of progress that we can all make as cannabis companies to make the planet a better place. Case in point, HEXO has recently become fully carbon neutral and also plastic neutral in all our operations, meaning we don't add a single gram of carbon or plastic into the environment. And I'm glad to be able to share the space with my fellow panelists, because I'm sure that over time, hopefully, and I challenge them to come join us in that mission to actually make a difference at the planetary level, not just in a products level.
Innovation, not just the product, but the packaging. Thanks for that, Sebastian. Thanks for everyone for joining on. I know we're a couple minutes over, but appreciate the time. Again, thank you, Hugo, CEO of AUXLY. We have Paolo, COO of ORGANIGRAM, Sebastian, CEO of HEXO, and Mandesh, CEO of Pure SunFarms, subsidiary of Village Farms. Thank you all so much for joining me here today for our Canadian panel on how innovation will drive growth. I definitely believe innovation will be a key part of that. So thank you all for joining us here today for the panel, as well as for AGP's Cannabis Consumer Conference. Hope the rest of your meetings and panels you might join us for will be great and insightful. So thank you very much. We'll see you all later.